Inside, the story behind the story, the Lori Vallow Chad Daybell story, the information that I've been given from people that are connected one way or another to players in this case. I call them players. I don't know if that's the right word. To cult members in this case. Let's talk about this. Welcome to Left Undone, Part 3, the story behind the story, people that know the cult members. Welcome back. I received several emails, like I've said in the past, regarding people that are connected to this case in one way, shape, or form. Basically, they knew somebody involved, or they were part of LDS, part of VOW, part of someone's friend, whatever, okay? So I want to tell you these are a couple different people that had some connection. One of the members of VOW and was introduced to VOW in 2011, 2012. She said she loved the preparedness part of it. She said they always had a year's supply of the basics, the wheat, the milk, the beans, the rice, all that kind of stuff. And she said they did it just in case there was a serious emergency. And again, that makes sense to me. I have an earthquake kit. I don't have a year's supply, but I do have, an earthquake kit. If we're out of power, if can't get to the store, we need to have some supplies. So that part about the LDS faith, I really think is very wise. So she said they had that year supply. They always had that year supply. She explained to me that one of their past prophets, Ezra Taft Benson, had said the revelation to produce and store food may be as essential to our temporal welfare today as boarding the ark was to people in the days of Noah. So this is really ingrained, as LDS members, as members of their faith, is really important to be prepared. She said to her that, thinking about it that way, that it's compelling, that it's comparing it to the days of Noah to stock everything up. She said that was really made her think, yeah, this is something really important to do. Her and her husband have a lot of children. She always took great pride in stretching the budget to feed her family. She was a stay-at-home mom. And it was really important to her, and she took a lot of pride in that. She said when she joined a VOW, she found the postings fascinating. People's dreams and visions, not just the part about everybody having the year's supply, which is one of the main reasons she joined, but the visions and dreams of people she thought was really, really fascinating. So she said one day she was on a VOW, and Christopher Parrott made this announcement that Chad Daybell was going to publish a book by one of the VOW members by the name of fellow dreamer, Julie Rowe. She said most people in a VOW did use aliases, and this was Julie Rowe. She said Christopher put up chapter 1 and chapter 2, and then a few more. She said they were the best chapters, and she told her husband that she wanted a copy of this book, Julie Rowe's book, for Mother's Day. So when it came out, she devoured it. She said she really liked the spiritual preparedness about the book and becoming a more Christ-like person. Her husband was from that part of Utah where Tammy's family and Chad were from. They agreed that they were going to go back there and buy a house again. They were living on the East Coast, and they decided they were going to go back to Utah and build a house. Because as their kids got older, their kids were going to go to BYU. And their kids could live there while they were going to BYU. Her husband grew up in the same congregation that Jack and Sheila Daybell were in. And he said they were very, very wonderful people. Jack and Sheila Daybell are Chad's parents. And at one point when they were back in Utah, she was looking at the congregation's directory, and she saw that Chad and Tammy Daybell were part of that congregation. They didn't really know Chad, but she saw that name, and because her husband had known of Jack and Sheila from growing up, her husband looked over and saw a guy that looked like a young Jack Daybell, and this was Chad. So he went up to him and he introduced himself. They invited them over to their house. That afternoon, they went by their house, brought some, homemade jam, and they visited with Tammy and Chad. This was around 2013, 2014. She said they lived in a humble, small home, and they were a really nice family. She said another time they all got together, they invited them over to their house, and they had a family fun night with the two families together. They found out that some of their kids actually knew some of the Daybell kids. And she said, Tammy was a really nice person, and Chad was too. Then a few years more down the road, her husband wanted to invite Julie Rowe to share her near-death experience. They wanted to do this, but they would have had to foot Julie Rowe's bill because, Julie Rowe, big author, they want to bring her in. But they would have had to spend the money to bring Julie Rowe, her airfare, everything, to their church across the country. What they did is they went ahead and did that, but they invited Julie to stay in their home. They took her to East Coast sites where they were living. She gave a couple presentations there in that area. And she said, I wasn't super impressed with Julie. And she said, but I was tired. I had a lot that I had to do. I had my family. I had to arrange for all this. So maybe it was just because I was tired. I wasn't that impressed with Julie and her presentations. She said it was really weird, but one thing she noticed about Julie was more interested in her husband than her. She was more interested in communicating and talking and spending time interacting with this woman's husband instead of this woman. Julie Rowe told her that when she was growing up, her mom, Julie Rowe's mom, had an affair and left her dad. And then Julie Rowe went into the fact that she needed bodyguards. And she said, why do you need bodyguards? And it all came down to one of Julie Rowe's brothers, I guess, had said something like, she better not show up here or she will regret it. So apparently Julie Rowe was threatened by her brother, according to her, when she told this story about why she needed bodyguards. And this woman is like, now that I know about Julie Rowe, I think maybe it was more about attention than actually fearing for her safety. And she said they did stop and visit Julie and Jeff when they were on road trips in Kansas. And she said, we visited them. They were short visits, a couple of hours. Later, in about 2015, they decided to move to Utah. And they went to stay in his parents' home that he had grown up in. His dad had been passed away. The house needed help repaired. There was some vandalism, stuff like that. So they wanted to go there to get it ready to sell. So they took off and they moved to Utah from the East Coast. And while they were there, one of their daughters ran into Garth Daybell. And her daughter had just come back from like a mission trip herself. And so Garth and her daughter went on a date and then came over afterwards to hang out, play games, do that kind of thing. And in that, they got in a conversation about Julie Rowe. And they also talked about Chad's recent move to Idaho. He shared a lot about Chad's visions, Garth did, with them. And he said, interestingly, that the whole time growing up, his dad had never said that the stuff in his book was real. He just thought his dad wrote end-of-day novels, fiction. And then he kind of laid out what was going to happen in the future. And she said, yeah, it's all in there. It's in Chad's books. She said, while they were living, helping fix up her father-in-law's house after he passed away, they went to church in a congregation that was in a group of congregations called a stake. I guess that's how. And apparently Hector Sosa was in that same stake. So she knew about Hector's book. She recognized them, and she saw Tammy, Hector's wife, and she called her over and said hi and introduced herself to Hector's wife, Tammy. And so they had a conversation about Hector's book, and she said, I asked Hector's wife, Tammy, I asked her, is the stuff in Hector's book really going to happen? And Tammy, Hector's wife, said, yes, it is. And we know it did not. So down the road, they moved somewhere else again, and she wound up meeting Jason Gwilliam. This is Tammy Daybell's brother-in-law, so married to Tammy's sister. And he was also in the boundaries of their congregation. The bishop stopped by, introduced themselves when they had moved to this new place, and said, we know that Chad knows you. And he said, what a nice family you are, what great people you are. And he said, you know, Tammy's brother-in-law, Jason, was a really nice guy. So eventually they were going back. Kids were done with the college there, whatever. They were going back to the East Coast again. And they stopped on their way back. They stopped at Jeff and Julie's house again. And she said, Julie was telling me some crazy stuff. And she said, it was weird. And when we left, she said, I told my husband, I don't ever, ever want to be around that woman again. She said, Julie has gone off the deep end. Julie had told her that she was Joan of Arc in a previous life, and that she and Chad had visions of each other being translated. And she said it was just too out there. Too out there. I guess all these people are connected, because every email I got, they're connected to somebody, right? But it's interesting because that's what we want, the story behind the story, right? The backstory. She said eventually she was back in the East Coast and she got a call from Nancy and Mike James, Preparing a People couple. She said, but she had never attended their events, but there was some connection with the family based on, you know, the relationship with the James. And so when she was talking to Nancy, Nancy asked her, what do you think of Julie Rowe? And she said she had told her that they had stopped there. And she's like, that's weird, because I never told anybody that I stopped there, but Julie Rowe must have said to her, you know, these people had stopped at my house. And she told Nancy James, she said, Julie's gone off the deep end. She has lost it. And she said they had invited Julie Rowe to speak at this conference, but some of the other speakers said that they wouldn't be part of the conference, the Preparing People conference, if Julie Rowe was going to be there. So I guess what happened in the end is they compromised and they said, we'll just have Julie Rowe introduce people and then everybody can be happy. Now, this is interesting. She said, and of course, a lot of this is all hearsay, but she said she heard that at one of the PAP conferences, Preparing People conferences, someone went up to Julie Rowe to speak to her. And when Julie Rowe turned and looked at them, it wasn't Julie Rowe's face. It was the face of an evil spirit. I feel like I'm telling ghost stories, like back when we were a kid, the flashlight. Like, this is so creepy. She said it freaked the lady out that saw it so much that she just looked at her with her mouth open. And the evil spirit realized that the woman had seen her, seen the evil spirit, and retreated back into Julie, and it became Julie again. And then Julie's face was visible. And so that person just said, peace out, I'm gone, left the conference. There's clearly no way to verify this. It could be just an urban legend. Some hearsay is all it is. We don't know. But since she told me, I thought I'd throw it in. You know what? With Julie Rowe, nothing would surprise me. That woman is not okay. And I truly believe that she is messing with something that is not. I can't figure out if Julie Rowe is truly like into dark spirits and witchcraft, or satanic stuff, or if she's just a moneymaker trying to swindle people, you know, the gypsy at the carnival kind of person. I go back and forth on that. I kind of tend to lean towards Julie Rowe's just full of garbage and she wants to make money. That's just my opinion of Julie. This woman's opinion thinks that Julie Rowe is working with dark spirits. And she said, you know, Julie's husband, Jeff, was a really nice guy. Really nice guy. And, you know, they're divorced now. And she said she wasn't surprised to hear that Julie got excommunicated and that they're divorced. So fast forward to 2019, and she gets a call. Someone she knows was friends with Emma Daybell. And thus they called and told her that Tammy Daybell had died in her sleep. She's like, that is just weird because I know she was a healthy 49-year-old. She said about a month later, she was reading the church's general conference in a church magazine and was this quote, and this really spoke to her. It said, part of this endeavor will require you to put aside many things in this world. Sometimes we speak almost casually about walking away from the world with its contention, pervasive temptations, and false philosophies. But truly, doing so requires you to examine your life meticulously and regularly. As you do so, the Holy Ghost will prompt you about what is no longer needful, what's no longer worthy of your time and energy. As you shift your focus away from the worldly distractions, some things that seem important to you now will recede in priority. You will need to say no to some things, even though they may seem harmless. As you embark upon and continue this lifelong process of consecrating your life to the Lord, the changes in your perspective, feelings, and spiritual strength will amaze you. She said, when I read that, I knew right away that I was not to renew my vow membership. She said, that I had to get rid of. She's like, I was kind of addicted to it, just like the other people have said. Like, why? How am I going to go away from this? Like, I'm addicted to this. So soon after that, she heard about the kid's disappearance. And she heard that it was tied to the death of Tammy Daybell. So all these connections are happening, and we all know that. Like the Chandler Police Department wound up calling after Charles was shot, and they started looking into things, and then they realized Tammy, and there was all these connections, right? So she got wind of this too, you know, being in the community, the Avow community, everything. And people were like, wait, what? So she had canceled her subscription, but she called somebody and said, can you go on Avow and look at this for me and read me the posts? And he just said, well, here, take my username, go to town. And so she went on there and she kept a really close eye on everything, and shocked because everyone was defending Chad and bashing Kay and Larry, like bashing, evil grandma, whatever, all that stuff they were saying about them. As things began to come forth, it was pretty obvious that Chad, his quick marriage, indicated that there was some very significant big stuff going on here. And it was hard to ignore whatever was happening. She emailed somebody that actually had some inside information about the dark, the light, the numbering system. And she was shocked that the person she talked to actually believed this whole thing. And she said, I told her, I can't believe you believe this stuff. And so that person quit talking to her. Never emailed her back, never talked to her anymore. And she said, so then she emailed another person from the Avow group, and she always loved her posts. And so they started talking back and forth with another, like 4 other ladies. And they said, we were like the dissenters of the whole thing. Like we were like, what's going on? And she said, even though she wasn't technically on there, but she was on there. She was snooping. She was paying attention. She had the password. She was looking. And so then she thought, you know, I am not honoring my commitment to God. I was supposed to be off of this thing. I knew I was supposed to be off this thing. So she left again completely. No more looking around on Avow. This one person that she was reaching out to, I'm sure this all kind of ties together at some point from before, was friends with Melanie Gibb. So there was also another lady. So these are friends of Melanie Gibb in this group that were talking to each other. And she said they took notes and they created a document about it. And she said, imagine my shock when a couple days later I heard you read it on your show. And you referred to it as the zombie email. She said, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. She said, it was really similar to the notes that I had, and I was just amazed how this got to you. She said, I kept getting offers from Christopher Parrott to come back, please come back to Avow. And she said, I just deleted them. But finally one day, she said, I sent him a reply. And I said, you know what? You disgust me. Even after seeing Chad touching Lori's butt when he was married to Tammy, and knowing that they were buying wedding stuff when she was still alive, and you defend him? She said, you're disgusting. You obviously care more about money than the sanctity of marriage. and I have never received anything else from him ever again. That was the end. And she said, I had another family member that was pretty close to, well, not close to Julie Rowe, but followed Julie Rowe pretty closely. And she said, you know, it was a little strange, but I asked her one day, do you believe in multiple mortal probations? She said, yes, it makes sense. She told me in this email, I have to tell you, our church does not believe that. And I've heard this over and over again. And I do believe the LDS church does not embrace that ideology, that belief system. They do not believe in multiple mortal probations. She said, I really feel bad for Tammy and Chad's kids. She said they're great people, and their dad just lusted over Lori, and she him, and a lot of people ended up dead. So the best people are dead, and the worst are still alive. So I wonder if Chad saw being in jail or prison in his vision. Maybe that was the end of his times, right? There's your vision, Chad. You're locked up forever. And she said, I also believe that Chad and Lori visiting through the portal and traveling to another room in the temple as spirits is actually astral projection. She said a lot of the stuff they were into is occultish. They thought they were so righteous and better than the rest of us, but they were just deceived by Satan and his minions. Thank you for watching Left Undone, Incomplete Investigations. I am Catherine. Thank you for subscribing if you're a new person here. Thanks so much. Take care, stay safe, stay well. Part 4 is on its way next.